welcome to TSK F1. My name's Rich, and this is your daily dose of the latest F1 news. Today, we're going to be talking about McLaren and Zak Brown talking about how they needed a reset, a new sponsor for Alfa Romeo, a seat fit in for Mick Schumacher, and also delving deeper into the money and time constraints placed on Red Bull going into this season because of cost cap infractions. Please don't forget to hit that like on the stream and subscribe in the lower right-hand corner. Let's get into it, though. First of all, starting with Mr. Zak Brown. He's just been talking about McLaren when he came into them and what needed to happen and what was going on. And he said basically that the work ethic has always been fantastic, but they needed a reset. And that started with making them papaya again. Papaya. Lovely papaya. And going back to the roots of it. Good morning, Pascal. How are you doing? They are the second most successful team in Formula One and the only racing team to win the Triple Crown of Monaco, Indy, and Le Mans. And he's really proud of that and wants to bring that back and bring memories of that back to the McLaren team. And he goes on to say he tries to bring a lot of passion and a lot of fun, but at the same time, a lot of seriousness and a desire to win everywhere, on and off the track, and hopefully that's what's coming through. He's been asked what he stands for and said racing. He absolutely loves racing. Business, I've run companies my whole life, having started my own company in and around motor racing, so standing for the business of racing. I love my job. I love showing up here every day, so I hope that rubs off on everyone. That is a great place to come to work. And McLaren are a bit of a curious one in recent years for me, because when they first went to Honda, it was clearly extremely difficult. It was always going to be difficult. I was one of the few at the time that, for no particular reason, other than I have a weird natural bias towards Honda, I thought Honda would come good, and they did eventually. But they've been a bit of a curious one because they took 10 steps back with the whole Honda thing and then blamed Honda for all of it, right? And then when you're in that position, you've got to make sure you've got a really good chassis so that when Honda goes and you get a new power unit, you start delivering immediately. And that really didn't happen, apart from, let's be real about it, a few fluke I think they've had a couple of fluky wins, but in and around the points and things like that, but never really getting back to the McLaren that some of us will remember right up at the front. And as Zak Brown says, the second most successful team ever in Formula One, which a lot of people won't even be aware of. And I'm really hopeful that McLaren can take a step this season and get further towards the front of the grid. They're just a bit of a strange one because they recovered a bit from the whole Honda situation to the midfield. And then they've not it's like the gap between, say, Ferrari, Mercedes and Red Bull to everyone else is huge. But then you get your Alpine, you get your Alfa Tauri, your McLaren, and they're all in this really close group of cars and teams. So hopefully, I hope McLaren can take a step forward. I think most people in the sport would be hopeful that McLaren can take a step forward. I think Zak Brown is about his business and is the right kind of guy to be at the head of it. Obviously, he's not like team principal, he's head of McLaren, but I think compared to Ron Dennis in the modern era, I think he is more of the right person. Just a little bit of news, really. Pictures were released by Mercedes that Mick Schumacher has had his seat fitting in the Mercedes, for Mercedes. It won't be the new car; it'll just be the sort of constraints of it, won't it? It's had his seat fitting because, unlike Daniel Ricciardo, Mick Schumacher actually is their reserve driver should Lewis or George become ill. Mick is the driver that would step in. So he does have to have a seat fit in. He does have to be all ready to go, and apparently all very happy in Mercedes. And there was just some quotes on this article saying how Mick feels like he's shown his pace, and a lot of people are happy with how he's developed, and that he was honestly surprised that he was being dropped by Haas. And Toto Wolff, I think these are old quotes now, saying, I believe that if we can provide him with a safe environment to develop further, he can be a good driver in a full-time seat in the future. We had to let Nick de Vries go in the same way for him to have a career. Now, that could also happen with Mick. Whether it's with our team or whether we have to let him go, we don't know yet. And I think this could be a good spot for Mick Schumacher, honestly. It's a difficult one for me because I am a bit of a Mick Schumacher fan, but on one side you have a race seat, say at Haas, but then you have a developmental role in Mercedes. And honestly, if he gets into another championship maybe and is doing some rounds there to stay sharp, it is a tough one for me to decide whether one is better than the other. Some would say racing, there's no replacement for that, but I would offer the sort of background at Mercedes you would think would be levels above what Haas is. So that experience of working within Mercedes and learning how they operate, getting more experience because all he knows is Haas at this point, but he'll get more experience at Mercedes, seeing how they work, working with different people. It could be good for him to develop. And actually, Vasseur, who's now the Ferrari boss, was saying similar about Thiaut Pourchaire, saying that F2 in its racing didn't offer a huge deal for Pourchaire, and that they really needed him in and around the Formula One team, not racing, but learning how Formula One works. So in that respect, it could be good for Mick to develop more, and who knows, he could come back to the grid in the future. I hope so. I think he's got the pace. So I think this is a new picture. What is this a new picture, guys? Have you ever seen this before? Let me know in the chat, okay? Because I didn't put this in the description or anything because I stumbled upon it about a minute before I went live and threw it in. But basically, Alfa Romeo, obviously their main sponsor went over to Alpha Tauri. Orlen, wasn't it? Orlen, the Polish oil company, I believe, went over to Alpha Tauri, and that left Robert Kubica out. And Alfa Romeo got Stake, which I believe is some kind of online betting company. You can see it on the nose cone on the side and on the rear wing there. But this is actually for this picture, I think, is for crypto data, and I think it's brand new. I've never seen this picture before. If you have, you can let me know in the chat. But this is a Romanian company, Crypto Data Whisper. Okay, so it's those on the top two. Fins on the I've never heard of them, so I'm just showing you this. Saw this picture yesterday, but I thought it was a Photoshop. No, I think it's official, Pascal. I think it's official. I literally stumbled upon it earlier. I mean, obviously, this isn't going to be the livery for the season. It's a show car. But, yeah. Romanian company Crypto Data Whisper announced that it became a sponsor and technical partner of Alfa Romeo Sauber. After we acquired the former MotoGP team, RNF Yamaha, which is currently RNF Crypto Data, we considered that we could do even more to develop the reputation and image of the company and the products we develop. And that's how we ended up in partnership with Alfa Romeo Sauber. On the one hand, as technical partners, on the other, as sponsors. Crypto Data is known for having unveiled last year a plan for an electric vehicle, for claiming they are ready to rescue crypto exchanges. But there we go. That basically is it. That is a show livery, and I just thought people might like to see it because, like I said, I stumbled upon it moments before I went live. I'd not noticed it yesterday, Pascal. So fair play. But I didn't look much after the Haas one. I'm gonna be honest. It's letters, isn't it? It's letters all over the car. I guess looking at that, I don't think it actually. I'm trying to figure it out, but I think it's just letters, isn't it? All over the car, basically. It's just vinyl wrapped, isn't it? But Crypto Data Whisper there on the top two fins of the front wing. New sponsor and technical partner for Alfa Romeo Sauber, which is always good to see. Sponsorship within F1, it's good to see because it helps the teams and it helps them get closer to the spend cap, doesn't it? Good morning, John. How are you doing? We're flying through it this morning. We're flying through it. Alfa Romeo had last year also a Valentine. Maybe, Pascal. I'm not sure. Now, we kind of spoke about this yesterday, and I wanted a little bit of back and forth if we could today, maybe. If not, then I'll just talk. But please do make sure you're hitting that like button and subscribing in the lower right-hand corner, guys. Now, we've got Christian Horner saying about the cost cap infraction penalty is significantly limiting everything they're doing with the development of the new car. And honestly, I'd like some Red Bull fan opinions on this if there are any in the chat. We're kind of covering this again, as we did yesterday. Dan says good. And he's saying that it's limiting significantly the amount of runs that they can do in the wind tunnel over each quarter. And I think that the team are having to adapt to that. It just means you have to be more focused and more disciplined in what you put through the testing process in the wind tunnel or with the simulation tools. But he does go on to say that the cost cap as a whole is really good and because it drives efficiency and there's much less wastage and things like that, right? And which is a good thing, you know, because obviously most of the time it's been about how bad it is. And I wanted to ask you guys and your opinions really on how much this should impact Red Bull. Now, as a fan of Formula One, I just care about the rules being followed, honestly, and whomever is breaking them, whomever is sticking to them. And if a rule is broken, all I care about is that there's a punishment and that punishment is adhered to and that it has an impact. It's not just a token punishment, you know, like, oh dear, Alpha Tauri have broken the spend cap. Don't do that again. You know, no, I want it to be a thing where they actually feel it and it's actually a problem. And it does hamper on track performance because rules is rules. And if we don't want that to happen, then we shouldn't have the rules, sort of thing. And I'm hoping, not because it's Red Bull, because I know people can get really, really funny about it. So I'm trying to qualify all of my statements here. Not because it's Red Bull, but I hope it is having an actual tangible effect on Red Bull, and they really are having to be very mindful about what they are doing. Sort of, John. But I don't think it's... I feel like he was asked a question, you know. I think he was asked a question because it is both sides of it on the quotes, John. So I will read it because he says about how it's impacting and you've got to be... They're having to be really thoughtful with what they do. But he does go on to say, if I look at the business now compared to where it was 4 or 5 years ago, we'd have ended up with a lot of stock or spare parts that were brand new, that were never used, and they were just scrapped. And so now you just can't afford that. You've got to be so effective and efficient. So I think from that point of view, it's driven great efficiency into the business. It's got rid of wastage that nobody saw previously. And I think that does offer a little bit of balance. You know, I think he was asked a question and he answered it with how it's affecting them. But this, you know what normally, you know, personal opinion with Horner, it can be a little bit dramatic, but I don't think, you know, but I think he was quite balanced with his answer. But he does also say he thinks that the regulations are still very immature. They're only in the second season, and I agree with that, honestly. They're still evolving and being tuned as they're being introduced onto the power unit side of the business as well. Sorry, excuse me. I think principally it's a good thing for Formula One, and it does create more of a level playing field. I think there are certain elements that still need to be tuned. At the moment, we're seeing a discrepancy between chassis financial regs and engine financial regs. That, on the chassis side, they can have a Christmas party. On the power unit side, they can't. So there are certain things that we need balancing up so there's a consistency across those caps. But I think on the whole, it's a very positive thing. I think that perhaps there's still too much weight put upon them in that we're still designing very expensive engines and very expensive cars because the technical regs drive you towards that. And I think that the technical and sporting regs, I think particularly on the chassis in 2026, we need to look at the cost of drivers which are driven through those technical regs, which will then in turn put less pressure on the budget cap itself. So he's basically talking about the technical regs as a whole, and that because of lots of reasons to do with technical regs, it just drives them towards a more expensive car to produce. And I guess that's as simple as aerodynamics and safety and things like this. It all costs money to get those cars homologated, to get them to those safety standards. And the prototypes every season, right? They are prototypes, all of them, every time. It's not, none of it is off the shelf. All of it is manufactured. A lot of it is manufactured in-house as well. You know, like the molds and things for the different parts are still hand carved by guys with, like, I've forgotten what the material is, but it's like super dense foam that they're hand carving to wrap the carbon fiber around, and it's a time-consuming, expensive, extremely skilled process. And you've got the machinists with all the different titanium bits, the artisans that make the exhausts, even, right? Because they're special people that make the exhausts. So there may be in 2026, maybe what Horner is looking at there is what can they do to maybe simplify the rules in certain ways that it's not quite as expensive. But that's what I get from that. That's what I derive from what he's saying there. But I think, you know, I'll be interested to see. I think that Red Bull was so fast last season and they've gained so much knowledge that I still think Red Bull will be the strongest next season, though I would hope the difference, we can see it, you know. I hope that they're not all conquering next season only because of this penalty. And I'd be saying the same if Ferrari got the fine, if Mercedes got the fine, if whoever got the fine. I'd want to see the on-track performance drop. If it doesn't, then you can only say that they've done an amazing job, right? They've done an incredible job because the fine is there, the money isn't being spent, and the time is having to be gathered from elsewhere. So that's, I don't know. I always worry because I don't want people to think I'm being harsh on Red Bull. I'd be the same. I'm a Formula One fan before a team or a driver, because teams and drivers come and go, but the sport, we hope, will continue beyond all of the current ones. You know, that's what you hope for. So I'm very much about the sport. But that was it really for today. At this time in the morning, I'm going to be honest, there wasn't a great deal to talk about. It was all people reporting top 10 lists and top 10 liveries of the past and things like that. So the little news I did bring you, you've got, and that's all that there was. Right, I will be back at 9 a.m. in the morning with the news on F1. Please do make sure you've hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, guys. Thanks so much for hanging out, and I will see you very soon. Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.